Well, hello. How are we all doing tonight? Well, I'm glad you're here if Sunday night is your favorite. Hello, Yane, Wings, Lynn, Amy, how we doing? Hey, Crazy Mama. Hey, Eddie, how we doing, sir? Hi, Melissa, how are you? Yeah, you are right on time. I'll be starting here in a few minutes. Queen, those, yeah, they're, my understanding is that they're at the New York Public Library. Hey, Rita, how are you doing? Hey, Tina. They're, the doll that's missing is Rue. Apparently Rue was lost to time. Oh, Trista, we are glad to have you. Hey, Naomi. How are you? You read along with Charlotte's Web? Oh, that's cool. I'm doing all right. It's Sunday. I'd say I have the day off tomorrow because of the holiday, but I don't have a job, so so I'd have the day off anyway. I am, Lynn. How about yourself? Oh, completed your garden. Nice. My grandfather was a big gardener. He basically took over their entire backyard, and he had everything from pumpkins to strawberries and rhubarb and like 3 different kinds of peas, broccoli, cauliflower. Had everything. It was wild. He was a cool guy. I miss him every day. For him, it was like meditation. It was really kind of wild. Oh, that's cool, Crazy Mama. How we doing, everybody? I see some new faces, which is always good. If you guys can like and share the crap out of this live, because for whatever reason TikTok hasn't been showing my lives to too many people this past week or so. It's weird. Yeah, Naomi, I would hit the bean stalks and just eat like beans, like green beans, yeah, and sugar snap peas and all that stuff. And Mama, that's a big deal. I hope she has a fantastic time. Well, it is now 9:05. And this is going to be a very relaxed evening. Nothing crazy. We're going to be doing half the book tonight, and then half the book, and then the other half tomorrow. Opal Sky, I am doing very well. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Roxy Raven, I'm glad you're here. I decided to... So, last Monday went so well. I decided to try out doing a Monday stream and see what happens. And if it works out, it's going to open up some new opportunities. Some serialized adult fiction, and other stuff like doing 2 nights like this with a short children's book where we don't even have. Where I'm not going to make you guys wait an entire week to finish it, or instead of doing one book that goes over 4 weeks. We can do it in 2 weeks with Sunday, Monday, and then Sunday, Monday. So there's a lot of opportunity for expansion there. So I'm kind of excited about it. Now, if we do Monday tomorrow and it completely tanks, I might reconsider that decision. But we shall see. We shall see. All right. Well, there are 65 of you in the room right now. Seems to be going up a little bit here. It's hard to find time to record sometimes. I've been doing great recording stuff up until the spring, and now it's like, oh my goodness, I have to wait until people are done mowing their lawns. Yeah, Tina, I totally agree with you. Winnie-the-Pooh hits different as an adult. It really, really does. Of course, my neighbors also have a Chihuahua. And I think that thing barks at the grass. It's ridiculous. And it's like literally right outside my studio window. I saw you going crazy on my post yesterday. Thank you. Yeah, Chihuahuas are angry little dogs. Oh, Yanni, I wish it was that easy. I'm working on it. All right. So, good evening, everyone. And welcome to Storytime with UndeadPapa. This is Sunday Night Bedtime Stories. Tonight we journey into the 100 Acre Wood. Spend some time with a bear of very little brain, but a very large heart. It's a story of friendship, small adventures, and the quiet magic hidden inside ordinary days. So wherever you're listening from, dim the lights, sit back and relax, because story time is about to begin. This is Winnie-the-Pooh by A. Milne. Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie-the-Pooh, some bees, and the stories begin. Here is Edward Bear, coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't anyhow. Perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom, ready to be introduced to you. Winnie-the-Pooh. When I first heard his name, I said, just as you are going to say, but I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't. But you said he's Winnie-the-Pooh. Don't you know what "the" means? Ah, yes. Now I do, I said quickly, and I hope you do too, because it is all the explanation you are going to get. Sometimes Winnie-the-Pooh likes a game of some sort when he comes downstairs, and sometimes he likes to sit quietly in front of the fire and listen to a story. This evening, what about a story? Said Christopher Robin. What about a story? I said. Could you very sweetly tell Winnie-the-Pooh one? I suppose I could, I said. What sort of stories does he like? About himself, because he's that sort of bear. Oh, I see. So could you very sweetly? I'll try, I said. So I tried. Once upon a time, a very long time ago now, about last Friday, Winnie-the-Pooh lived in a forest all by himself under the name of Sanders. What does under the name mean? Asked Christopher Robin. It means he had the name over the door in gold letters and lived under it. Winnie-the-Pooh wasn't quite sure, said Christopher Robin. No, I am, said a growly voice. Then I will go on, said I. One day, when he was out walking, he came to an open place in the middle of the forest, and in the middle of this place there was a large oak tree. And from the top of the tree there came a loud buzzing noise. Hey, Katie. Winnie-the-Pooh sat down at the foot of the tree, put his head between his paws, and began to think. First of all, he said to himself, "That buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that, just buzzing and buzzing, without its meaning something. If there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise. And the only reason for making a buzzy noise that I know of is because you're a bee." And then he thought another long time and said, "And the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey." Then he got up and said, "And the only reason for making honey is so I can eat it." So he began to climb the tree. He climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, and as he climbed he sang a little song to himself. It went like this. "Isn't it funny how a bear likes honey? Buzz, 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 I wonder why he does." Then he climbed a little further, and a little further, and then just a little further. By that time he had thought of another song. It's a very funny thought that if bears were bees, they'd build their nests at the bottom of trees, and that being so, if the bees were bears, we shouldn't have to climb up all these stairs. He was getting rather tired by this time, so that is why he sang a complaining song. He was nearly there now, and if he stood just on that branch, crack! "Oh, help!" he said, Pooh, as he dropped 10 feet onto the branch below him. "If I only hadn't," he said, as he bounced 20 feet onto the next branch. "You see what I meant to do," he explained, as he turned head over heels and crashed onto another branch 30 feet below. "What I meant to do. Of course, it was rather," he admitted, as he slithered very quickly through the next 6 branches. "It all comes, I suppose," he decided, as he said goodbye to the last branch, spun around 3 times, and flew gracefully into a gorse bush. "It all comes of liking honey so much. Oh, help!" He crawled out of the gorse bush, brushed the prickles from his nose, and began to think again. And the first person he thought of was Christopher Robin. "Was that me?" said Christopher Robin in an awed voice, hardly daring to believe it. "That was you." Christopher Robin said nothing, but his eyes got larger and larger, and his face got pinker and pinker. So Winnie-the-Pooh went round to his friend Christopher Robin, who lived behind a green door in another part of the forest. "Good morning, Christopher Robin," he said. "Good morning, Winnie-the-Pooh," said you. "I wonder if you've got such a thing as a balloon about you." "A balloon?" "Yes, I just said to myself coming along, I wonder if Christopher Robin has such a thing as a balloon about him. I just said it to myself, thinking of balloons and wondering." "What do you want a balloon for?" you said. Winnie-the-Pooh looked around to see that nobody was listening. He put a paw to his mouth and said in a deep whisper, "Honey." "But you don't get honey with balloons." "I do," said Pooh. "Well, it just happened that you had been to a party the day before at the house of your friend Piglet, and you had balloons at the party. You had a big green balloon, and one of Rabbit's relations had a big blue one, and had left it behind, being really too young to go to a party at all, and so you had brought the green one and the blue one home with you." "Which one would you like?" you asked Pooh. He put his head between his paws and thought very carefully. "It's like this," he said. "When you go after honey with a balloon, the great thing is not to let the bees know you're coming. Now, if you have a green balloon, they might think you were only part of the tree and not notice you. And if you have a blue balloon, they might think you were only part of the sky and not notice you. And the question is, which is most likely?" "Wouldn't they notice you underneath the balloon?" you said. "They might, or they might not," said Winnie-the-Pooh. "You never can tell with bees." He thought for a moment and said, "I shall try to look like a small black cloud. That will deceive them." "Then you'd better have the blue balloon," you said, and so it was decided. Well, you both went out with the blue balloon, and you took your gun with you, just in case, as you always did. And Winnie-the-Pooh went to a very muddy place that he knew of, and rolled until he was black all over. And then, when the balloon was blown up as big, you and Pooh were holding on to the string. You let go suddenly, and Pooh Bear floated gracefully up into the sky and stayed there, level with the top of the tree and about 20 feet away from it. "Hooray!" you shouted. "Isn't that fine?" shouted Winnie-the-Pooh down to you. "What do I look like?" "You look like a bear holding onto a balloon," you said. "Not," Pooh said anxiously, "not like a small black cloud in the blue sky?" "Not very much." "Ah, well, perhaps from up here it looks different, and as you say, you never can tell with bees." There was no wind to blow him nearer to the tree, so there he stayed. He could see the honey, he could smell the honey, but he couldn't quite reach the honey. After a little while he called down to you. "Christopher Robin," he said in a loud whisper. "Hello?" "I think the bees suspect something." "What sort of thing?" "I don't know, but something tells me that they're suspicious." "Perhaps they think you're after their honey." "It may be that. You never can tell with bees." There was another little silence, and he called down to you again. "Christopher Robin." "Yes?" "Have you an umbrella in your house?" "I think so." "I wish you would bring it out here and walk up and down with it and look up at me every now and then and say, 'Tut, tut, it looks like rain.'" I think if you did that, it would help the deception which we are practicing on these bees." Well, you laughed to yourself. Silly old bear. But you didn't say it out loud, because you were fond of him. And you went home for your umbrella. "Oh, there you are," called down Winnie-the-Pooh as soon as you got back to the tree. "I was beginning to get anxious. I have discovered that the bees are now definitely suspicious." "Shall I put my umbrella up?" you said. "Yes, but wait a moment. We must be practical. The important bee to deceive is the queen bee. Can you see which is the queen bee from down there?" "No." "A pity. Well, now, if you walk up and down with your umbrella saying, 'Tut, tut, it looks like rain,' I shall do what I can by singing a little cloud song, and such as a cloud might sing. Go!" So, while you walked up and down and wondered if it would rain, Winnie-the-Pooh sang this song. "How sweet to be a cloud, floating in the blue. Every little cloud always sings aloud. How sweet to be a cloud, floating in the blue. It makes him very proud to be a little cloud." The bees were still buzzing as suspiciously as ever. Some of them, indeed, left their nest and flew all around the cloud as it began the second verse of the song, and one bee sat down on the nose of the cloud for a moment and then got up again. "Christopher! Ow! Robin!" called out the cloud. "Yes? I have just been thinking, and I have come to a very important decision. These are the wrong sorts of bees." "Are they?" "Quite the wrong sort. So I should think they would make the wrong sort of honey, shouldn't you?" "Would they?" "Yes. So I think I shall come down." "How?" asked you. Winnie-the-Pooh hadn't thought about this. If he let go of the string, he would fall, bump, and he didn't like the idea of that. So he thought for a long time. And then he said, "Christopher Robin, you must shoot the balloon with your gun. Have you got your gun?" "Of course I have," you said. "But if I do that, it will spoil the balloon," you said. "But if you don't, I shall have to let go, and that would spoil me." When you put it like this, you saw how it was, and you aimed very carefully at the balloon and fired. "Oh!" said Pooh. "Did I miss?" you asked. "You didn't exactly miss," said Pooh, "but you missed the balloon." "I'm so sorry," you said, and you fired again. This time you hit the balloon, and the air came out slowly, and Winnie-the-Pooh floated down to the ground. But his arms were so stiff from holding onto the string of the balloon all the time that they stayed up straight in the air for more than a week. And whenever a fly came and settled on his nose, he had to blow it off. And I think, but I am not sure, that is why he is always called Pooh. "Is that the end of the story?" asked Christopher Robin. "Well, that's the end of that one. There are others." "About Pooh and me?"
And Piglet and Rabbit and all of you. Don't you remember?"
"I do remember, and then when I try to remember, I forget."
"That day when Pooh and Piglet tried to catch the heffalump?"
"They didn't catch it, did they?"
"No."
"Pooh couldn't, because he hasn't any brain. Did I catch it?"
"Well, that comes into the story." Christopher Robin nodded.
"I do remember," he said, "only Pooh doesn't very well, so that's why he likes having it told to him again, because then it's a real story and not just remembering."
"That's just how I feel," I said.
Christopher Robin gave a deep sigh, picked up his bear by the leg,
and walked off to the door, trailing Pooh behind him. At the door he turned and said, "Coming to see me have my bath?" "I might," I said. "It didn't hurt him when I shot him, did I?" "Not a bit." He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie-the-Pooh bump, bump, bump going up the stairs behind him. I have that same problem. I remember, but when I try to remember, I forget. Yeah, I'm wondering if I'm going senile. So, yeah, interesting thing as as was mentioned earlier, the original dolls are actually in the New York Public Library. There is Piglet, Eeyore, Kanga, Tigger, and Winnie-the-Pooh. The only one that's missing is Roo, because he was lost long ago. It's more, for me, it's more of a ADHD problem. Of course, I may be autistic, so I just haven't been tested. Songbird, I did not know that. That's very cool. Something else, Christopher Robin was actually a real person. It was A.A. Milne's son. And a lot of the stories came out from the conversations he would have with him, his toys, and the games they played together. Which is probably why the stories feel so genuine and emotionally observant. So, yeah. Pretty cool. All right. So let's do the next chapter. Chapter 2, in which Pooh goes visiting and gets into a tight place. Edward Bear, known to his friends as Winnie-the-Pooh, or Pooh for short, was walking through the forest one day, humming proudly to himself. He made up a little hum that very morning, as he was doing his stoutness exercises in front of the glass. Tra-la-la, tra-la-la, as he stretched up high as he could go, and then tra-la-la, tra-la-la, oh, help, as he tried to reach his toes. After breakfast, he had said it over and over to himself until he had learned it off by heart, and now he was humming it right through properly. It went like this. Tra-la-la, 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 rum-tum-tiddle-um-tum, diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle, tiddle-little-diddle-little, rum-tum-tum-diddle-um. You guys got me singing again. Well, he was humming this hum to himself and walking along gaily, wondering what everyone else was up to, and what it felt like being somebody else, when suddenly he came to a sandy bank, and in the bank was a large hole. "Aha!" said Pooh. "If I know anything about anything, that hole means rabbit," he said. "And rabbit means company," he said. "And company means food, and listening to me humming, and such like rum-tum-tum-tiddle-um." So he bent down, put his head into the hole, and called out, "Is anybody at home?" There was a sudden scuffling noise from inside the hole, and then silence. "What I said was, 'Is anybody at home?'" called out Pooh very loudly. "No," said a voice, and then added, You needn't shout so loud. I heard you quite well the first time." "Bother," said Pooh. "Isn't there anybody here at all?" "Nobody." Winnie-the-Pooh took his head out of the hole and thought for a little. And he thought to himself, there must be somebody there, because somebody must have said nobody. So he put his head back in the hole and said, "Hello, Rabbit, isn't that you?" "No," said Rabbit in a different sort of voice this time. "But isn't that Rabbit's voice?" "I don't think so," said Rabbit. "It isn't meant to be." "Oh," said Pooh. He took his head out of the hole and had another think, and then he put it back and said, "Well, could you very kindly tell me where Rabbit is?" "He has gone to see his friend Pooh Bear, who is a great friend of his." "But this is me," said Bear, very much surprised. "What sort of me?" "Pooh Bear." "Are you sure?" said Rabbit, still more surprised. Quite sure," said Pooh. "Oh, well, then come in." So Pooh pushed and pushed and pushed his way through the hole, and at last he got in. "Well, you were quite right," said Rabbit, looking at him all over. "It is you. Glad to see you. Who did you think it was?" "Well, I wasn't sure. You know how it is in the forest. One can't have anybody coming into one's house. One has to be careful. What about a mouthful of something?" Pooh always liked a little something at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he was very glad to see Rabbit getting out the plates and mugs. And when Rabbit said, "Honey or condensed milk with your bread?" he was so excited that he said, "Both," and then, so as not to seem greedy, he added, "Don't bother about the bread, please." And for a long time after that, he said nothing, until at last, humming to himself in a rather sticky voice, he got up, shook Rabbit lovingly by the paw, and said that he must be going. "Must you?" said Rabbit. "Well," said Pooh, "I could stay a little longer if you—" He tried very hard to look in the direction of the larder. "As a matter of fact," said Rabbit, "I was going out myself directly." "Oh, well then, I'll be going on. Goodbye." "Well, goodbye, if you're sure you won't have any more." "Is there any more?" asked Pooh quickly. Rabbit took the covers off the dishes and said no, there wasn't. "I thought not," said Pooh, nodding to himself. "Well, goodbye, I must be going." So he started to climb out of the hole. He pulled with his front paws and pushed with his back paws, and in a little while his nose was out in the open again, and then his ears, and then his front paws, and then his shoulders, and then— "Oh, help!" said Pooh. "I'd better go back." "Oh, bother!" said Pooh. "I shall have to go on." "I can't do either," said Pooh. "Oh, help and bother!" Now by this time Rabbit wanted to go out for a walk, too, and finding the front door full, he went out by the back door and came round to Pooh and looked at him. "Hello, are you stuck?" he asked. "No," said Pooh carelessly. "Just resting and thinking and humming to myself." Pooh Bear stretched out a paw, and Rabbit pulled and pulled and pulled. "Oh!" cried Pooh. "You're hurting." "The fact is," said Rabbit, "you're stuck." "It all comes," said Pooh crossly, "of not having front doors big enough." "It all comes," said Rabbit sternly, "of eating too much." I thought at the time, said Rabbit, only I didn't like to say anything, said Rabbit. That one of us was eating too much, said Rabbit. And I knew it wasn't me, he said. Well, I shall go and fetch Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin lived at the other end of the forest, and when he came back with Rabbit and saw the front of Pooh, he said, "Silly old bear," in such a loving voice that everybody felt quite hopeful again. "I was beginning to think," said Pooh Bear, sniffing slightly, "that Rabbit might never be able to use his front door again, and I should hate that," he said. "So should I," said Rabbit. "Use his front door again?" said Christopher Robin. "Of course he'll use his front door again." "Good," said Rabbit. "If we can't pull you out, Pooh, we might push you back in." Rabbit scratched his whiskers thoughtfully and pointed out that when once Pooh was pushed back, he was back. And of course nobody was more glad to see Pooh than he was. Still, there it was. Some lived in trees and some lived underground, and... "You mean I'd never get out?" said Pooh. "I mean," said Rabbit, "that having got so far, it seems a pity to waste it." Christopher Robin nodded. "Then there's only one thing to be done," he said. "We shall have to wait for you to get thin again." "How long does that getting thin take?" asked Pooh anxiously. "Well, about a week, I should think." "But I can't stay here for a week." "You can stay here all right, silly old bear. It's getting you out which is so difficult." "We'll read to you," said Rabbit cheerfully, "and I hope it won't snow," he added. "And I say, old fellow, you're taking up a good deal of room in my house. Do you mind if I use your back legs as a towel horse? Because, I mean, there they are, doing nothing, and it would be very convenient to just hang the towels on them." "A week?" said Pooh gloomily. "What about meals?" "I'm afraid no meals," said Christopher Robin, "because of getting thin quicker. But we will read to you." Bear began to sigh, and then found he couldn't because he was so tightly stuck, and a tear rolled down his eye as he said, "Then would you read a sustaining book, such as would help and comfort a wedged bear in a great tightness?" So for a week Christopher Robin read that sort of book at the north end of Pooh, and Rabbit hung his washing on the south end. And in between, Bear felt himself getting slenderer and slenderer. And at the end of the week, Christopher Robin said, "Now!" So he took hold of Pooh's front paws, and Rabbit took hold of Christopher Robin, and all of Rabbit's friends and relations took hold of Rabbit, and they all pulled together. And for a long time, Pooh only said, "Ow!" and "Oh!" And then, all of a sudden, he said, "Pop!" just as if a cork were coming out of a bottle. And Christopher Robin and Rabbit and all Rabbit's friends and relations went head over heels backwards, and on top of them came Winnie-the-Pooh free. So, with a nod of thanks to his friends, he went on with his walk through the forest, humming proudly to himself. When Christopher Robin looked after him lovingly and said to himself, "Silly old bear." God, I love this book. It really was one of my absolute favorites when I was a kid. I remember watching the Disney cartoons back in the 80s and late 70s. But
I hope you guys are enjoying so far. Thank you guys for the follows and the shares and the likes. Wow, we're at 52,000 already. That's crazy. Was it last Sunday we got up to like 300,000 likes? That's just crazy. That's just crazy, man. Look at that. 14,022 followers. Thank you guys. That's really awesome. Thank you, Eddie. Oh, Towie Bixby, thank you. I appreciate it. So like I said, this is going to be a relaxed evening because Winnie-the-Pooh is actually, it's a relatively short book. It's only about 24,000 words. And for me, I read at a pace which for 2 hours puts me at about anywhere from 12,000 to 15,000 words a night. So we're gonna relax a little bit, and we're not going to rush through this one. Well, I am glad you're still here, Trista. Chapter 3, in which Pooh and Piglet go hunting and nearly catch a woozle. The Piglet lived in a very grand house in the middle of a beech tree, and the beech tree was in the middle of the forest, and the Piglet lived in the middle of the house. Next to his house was a piece of broken board which had Trespassers W on it. When Christopher Robin asked Piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name, and had been in the family for a long time. Christopher Robin said you couldn't be called Trespassers W, and Piglet said yes, you could, because his grandfather was, and it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William, and his grandfather had had 2 names in case he lost one. Trespassers after an uncle, and William after Trespassers. "I've got 2 names," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "Well, there you are, it proves it," said Piglet. One fine winter's day, when Piglet was brushing away the snow in front of his house, he happened to look up, and there was Winnie-the-Pooh. Pooh was walking round and round in a circle, thinking of something else, and when Piglet called to him, he just went on walking. "Hello," said Piglet. "What are you doing?" "Hunting," said Pooh. "Hunting what?" "Tracking something," said Winnie-the-Pooh very mysteriously. "Tracking what?" said Piglet, coming closer. "That's just what I ask myself. I ask myself, what?" "What do you think you'll answer?" "I shall have to wait until I catch up with it," said Winnie-the-Pooh. "Now, look here," he pointed to the ground in front of him. "What do you see there?" "Tracks," said Piglet. "Paw marks." He gave a little squeak of excitement. "Oh, Pooh, do you think it's a woozle?" "It may be," said Pooh. "Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. You never can tell with paw marks." With these few words he went on tracking, and Piglet, after watching him for a minute or 2, ran after him. Winnie-the-Pooh had come to a sudden stop, and was bending over the tracks in a puzzled sort of way. "What's the matter?" asked Piglet. "It's a very funny thing," said Bear, "but there seem to be 2 animals now. This, whatever it was, has been joined by another, whatever it is, and the 2 of them are now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals?" Piglet scratched his ear in a nice sort of way, and said that he had nothing to do until Friday,
and would be delighted to come in case it really was a woozle.
"You mean in case it really is 2 woozles," said Winnie-the-Pooh,
and Piglet said that anyhow he had nothing to do until Friday, so off they went together. There was a small spinney of larch trees just here, and it seemed as if the 2 woozles, if that is what they were, had been going around this spinney, so round this spinney went Pooh and Piglet after them. Piglet passing the time by telling Pooh that his grandfather Trespassers W had done what his grandfather Trespassers W had done to remove stiffness after tracking, and how his grandfather Trespassers W had suffered in his later years from shortness of breath and other matters of interest, and Pooh wondering what a grandfather was like, and if perhaps this was 2 grandfathers they were after now, and if so, whether he would be allowed to take one home and keep it, and what Christopher Robin would say. And still the tracks went on in front of them. Suddenly Winnie-the-Pooh stopped and pointed excitedly in front of them.
"Look!"
"What?" said Piglet with a jump. And then, to show that he hadn't been frightened, he jumped up and down once or twice in an exercising sort of way.
"The tracks," said Pooh. "A 3rd animal has joined the other 2.
"Pooh!" cried Piglet. "Do you think it is another woozle?"
"No," said Pooh, "because it makes different marks. It is either 2 woozles and 1 as it might be whizzle, or 2 as it might be whizzles, and 1, if so it is, woozle. Let us continue to follow them."
So they went on, feeling just a little anxious now, in case the 3 animals in front of them were of hostile intent. And Piglet wished very much that his grandfather T.W. were there, instead of elsewhere, and Pooh thought how nice it would be if they met Christopher Robin suddenly, but quite accidentally, and only because he liked Christopher Robin so much. And then, all of a sudden, Winnie-the-Pooh stopped again, and licked the tip of his nose in a cooling manner, for he was feeling more hot and anxious than ever in his life before. There were 4 animals in front of them.
"Do you see, Piglet? Look at their tracks. 3, as it were, woozles, and 1, as it was, whizzle. Another woozle has joined them."
And so it seemed to be. There were the tracks crossing over each other here, getting muddled up with each other over there, but quite plainly, every now and then, the tracks of 4 sets of paws. "I think," said Piglet, when he had licked the tip of his nose too, and found that it brought very little comfort, "I think that I have just remembered something. I have just remembered something that I forgot to do yesterday, and shan't be able to do tomorrow, so I suppose I really ought to go back and do it now."
"We'll do it this afternoon, and I'll come with you," said Pooh.
"It isn't the sort of thing you can do in the afternoon," said Piglet quickly. "It's a very particular morning thing that has to be done in the morning, and if possible between the hours of— what did you say the time was?"
"About 12, said Winnie-the-Pooh, looking at the sun.
"Between, as I was saying, the hours of 12 and 12:05. So really, dear old Pooh, if you'll excuse me— What's that?"
Pooh looked up at the sky, and then, as he heard the whistle again, he looked up into the branches of the big oak tree, and then he saw a friend of his.
"It's Christopher Robin," he said.
"Oh, then you'll be all right," said Piglet. "You'll be quite safe with him. Goodbye."
And he trotted off home as quickly as he could, very glad to be out of all danger again. Christopher Robin came slowly down his tree. "Silly old bear," he said.
What were you doing? First you went round the spinney twice by yourself, then Piglet ran after you, and you went round again together, and then you were just going around a fourth time." "Wait a minute," said Winnie-the-Pooh, holding up his paw. He sat down and thought, in the most thoughtful way he could think. Then he fitted his paw into one of the tracks, and then he scratched his nose twice and stood up. "Yes," said Winnie-the-Pooh. "I see now," said Winnie-the-Pooh. "I have been foolish and deluded," said he. "I am a bear of no brain at all." "You're the best bear in all the world," said Christopher Robin soothingly. "Am I?" said Pooh hopefully, and then he brightened up suddenly. "Anyhow," he said, "it's near luncheon time." So he went home for it. Now here's where we get to my favorite character. So who's everybody's favorite character? I'm curious. Mine is Eeyore. Always has been. Eeyore. Yep. Tigger. Yep. Eeyore is my spirit animal. Pooh. Yeah. Who doesn't love Pooh? Tigger. Eeyore. The owl or rabbit? I do like them. Piglet. Winnie-the-Pooh is your first tattoo? Nice. Eeyore. Well, I asked. I want to know, May Basil. T-I double gut-er. I was channeling. Oh, okay. I gotcha. No, that was good. That was good. I just didn't catch it. All right. Chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds one. Definitely rabbit. Nice. The old gray donkey, Eeyore, stood by himself in a thistly corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, "Why?" And sometimes he thought, "Wherefore?" And sometimes he thought, "Insomuch as which?" And sometimes he didn't quite know what he was thinking. So when Winnie-the-Pooh came stumping along, Eeyore was very glad to be able to stop thinking for a little in order to say, "How do you do?" in a gloomy manner to him. "And how are you?" said Winnie-the-Pooh. Eeyore shook his head from side to side. "Not very how," he said. "I don't seem to have felt at all how for a long time." "Oh, dear, dear," said Pooh. "I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you." So Eeyore stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie-the-Pooh walked all around him once. "Why, what's happened to your tail?" he said in surprise. "What has happened to it?" said Eeyore. "It isn't there." "Are you sure?" "Well, either a tail is there or it isn't there.
You can't make a mistake about it, and yours isn't there."
"Then what is?"
"Nothing."
"Let's have a look," said Eeyore, and he turned slowly round to the place where his tail had been a little while ago, and then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned round the other way until he came back to where he was at first. Oh, excuse me. And then put his head down and looked between his front legs, and at last said with a long, sad sigh, "I believe you're right."
"Of course I'm right," said Pooh.
"That accounts for a good deal," said Eeyore gloomily. "It explains everything. No wonder."
"You must have left it somewhere," said Winnie-the-Pooh.
"Somebody must have taken it," said Eeyore. "How like them," he added after a long silence.
Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what. So he decided to do something helpful instead. "Eeyore," he said solemnly, "I, Winnie-the-Pooh, will find your tail for you."
"Thank you, Pooh," answered Eeyore. "You're a real friend," said he. "Not like some," he said.
So Winnie-the-Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in a blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun as if they had come to put it out, and then sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all the year round seemed old and dowdy now beside the new green lace which the beeches had put on so prettily. Through copse and spinney marched Bear, down open slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone, into the heather again, and so at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood, for it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived. "And if anyone knows anything about anything," said Bear to himself, "it's Owl who knows something about something," he said. "Or my name's not Winnie-the-Pooh," he said. "Which it is," he added. "So there you are." Owl lived in the Chestnuts, an old-world residence of great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or seemed so to Bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell-pull. Underneath the knocker there was a notice which read, "Please ring if an answer is required." Underneath the bell-pull there was a notice which said, "Please knock if an answer is not required." These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. For Owl, wise though he was in many ways, able to read and write and spell his own name, W-O-L, yet somehow went all to pieces over delicate words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie-the-Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and he called out in a very loud voice, "Owl, I require an answer. It's Bear speaking." And the door opened, and Owl looked out.
"Oh, hello, Pooh," he said. "How's things?"
terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail, and he's moping about it. So could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?"
"Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows."
"What does crustamony proceed cake mean?" said Pooh, "for I am a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me."
"It means the thing to do."
"As long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly.
"The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then—"
"Just a moment," said Pooh, holding his paw up. "What do we do to this? What were you saying? You sneezed just as you were going to tell me."
"I didn't sneeze."
"Yes, you did, Owl."
"Excuse me, Pooh, I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it."
"Well, you can't know without something having been sneezed."
"What I said was, first issue a reward." "You're doing it again," said Pooh sadly.
"A reward," said Owl very loudly.
"Write a notice to say that we will give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail."
I see, said Pooh, nodding his head. "Talking about large somethings," he went on dreamily. "I generally have a small something about this time in the morning," and he looked wistfully at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlor. "Just a mouthful of condensed milk or what not, with perhaps a lick of honey."
"Well then," said Owl, "we write out this notice, and we'll put it up all over the forest."
A lick of honey," murmured Bear to himself, or not, as the case may be. And he gave a deep sigh, and tried very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on and on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started, and he explained that the person to write out this notice was Christopher Robin.
"It was he who wrote out the ones on my front door for me. Did you see them, Pooh?"
For some time now Pooh had been saying yes and no in turn with his eyes shut to all that Owl was saying, and having said yes last time, he said no, not at all, now without really knowing what Owl was talking about.
"Did you see them?" said Owl, a little surprised. "Come and look at them now."
So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it, and he looked at the bell rope and the notice below it. And the more he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt that he had seen something like it, somewhere else, some time before.
"Handsome bell rope, isn't it?" said Owl.
Pooh nodded. It reminds me of something," he said, "but I can't think what. Where did you get it?"
"I just came across it in the forest. I was hanging over a bush, and I thought at first somebody lived there. So I rang it, and nothing happened. And then I rang it again, very loudly, and it came off in my hand. And as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home, and—"
"Owl," said Pooh solemnly, "you made a mistake. Somebody did want it."
"Who?"
"Eeyore. My dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it."
"Fond of it?"
"Attached to it," said Winnie-the-Pooh sadly. So, with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore. And when Christopher Robin had nailed it in its right place again,
Eeyore frisked about the forest, waving his tail so happily that Winnie-the-Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. And wiping his mouth half an hour afterwards, he sang to himself proudly. "Who found the tail? I," said Pooh. "A quarter to 2. Only it was a quarter to 11, really. I found the tail." Kayla, Magic is a good book. It is a very good book. I enjoyed The Hellbound Heart, and he has a trilogy of young adult books called Aberrat, and they are fascinating. They are fascinating. Oh. Ooh, we're at 102,000 likes. You guys are awesome. You really are. You know, one of the cool things about Eeyore, people seem to deeply relate to him. And what's sweet is if you read the books and, watch the adaptions, whatnot, he's all gloomy and very sad and very melancholy, but his friends never abandon him. They don't try to fix him. They always include him, which is really kind of moving in a way. Right? I think we all need friends like that, Something I found. Holy cow. Something I found that I thought was interesting was that, and I didn't know this, I thought that Winnie-the-Pooh was just Christopher Robin's teddy bear. But the name Winnie actually came from a black bear named Winnipeg at the London Zoo. They called it Winnie for short. And so Christopher Robin loved going to the zoo and seeing the bear so much that he ended up calling his bear Winnie. Now, the Pooh, or Pooh, a lot of people assume that it's just made up, and it's actually not. Milne actually let people know that one time they were on holiday with the family and they had encountered a swan who, it's turned out, the swan's name was Pooh. So somehow Winnie the Pooh, that's how he got his full name. So yeah, it's interesting how different this book hits when you're an adult compared to when you're a kid. Don't you know what there means? There means. Oh, now I do. Edward Bear, yep. And that's right at the very beginning of the book. Your sister was Piglet. Nice. All right, well, it is 10 o'clock and we have 2 chapters left. Chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a heffalump. One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie-the-Pooh and Piglet were all walking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, "I saw a heffalump today, Piglet."
"What was it doing?" asked Piglet. "Just jumping along," said Christopher Robin. "I don't think it saw me." "I saw one once," said Piglet. "At least, I think I did," he said. "Only perhaps it wasn't." "So did I," said Pooh, wondering what a heffalump was like. "You don't often see them," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "Not now," said Piglet. "Not at this time of year," said Pooh. Then they all talked about something else until it was time for Pooh and Piglet to go home together. At first, as they stumped along the path which edged the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they came to the stream, and had helped each other across the stepping stones, and were able to walk side by side again over the heather, they began to talk in a friendly way about this and that. And Piglet said, If you see what I mean, Pooh," and Pooh said, "I was just thinking, it was just what I think myself, Piglet." And Piglet said, "But on the other hand, Pooh, we must remember," and Pooh said, "Quite true, Piglet, although I had forgotten it for the moment." And then, just as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked round to see that nobody was listening, and said in a very solemn voice, "Piglet, I have decided something." "What have you decided, Pooh?" "I have decided to catch a heffalump." Pooh nodded his head several times as he said this, and waited for Piglet to say, "How?" or "Pooh, you couldn't," or something helpful of that sort. But Piglet said nothing. The fact was, Piglet was wishing that he had thought about it first. "I shall do it," said Pooh, after waiting a little longer, "by means of a trap, and it must be a cunning trap, so you will have to help me, Piglet." "Pooh," said Piglet, feeling quite happy again now, "I will." And then he said, "How shall we do it?" And Pooh said, "That's just it. How?" And then they sat down together to think. Pooh's first idea was that they should dig a very deep pit, and then the heffalump would come along and fall into the pit. "Why?" said Piglet. "Why what?" said Pooh. "Why would he fall in?" Pooh rubbed his nose with his paw and said that the heffalump might be walking along, humming a little song, and looking up at the sky, wondering if it would rain, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that this was a very good trap, but supposing it were raining already? Pooh rubbed his nose again, and said that he hadn't thought of that. And then he brightened up and said that if it were raining already, the heffalump would be looking at the sky wondering if it would clear up, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that now that this point had been explained, he thought it was a cunning trap. Pooh was very proud when he heard this, and he felt that the heffalump was as good as caught already. But there was just one other thing which had to be thought about, and it was this: where should they dig the very deep pit? Piglet said that the best place would be somewhere where a heffalump was, just before he fell into it, only about a foot farther. "But then he would see us digging it," said Pooh. "Not if he was looking at the sky," he would suspect, said Pooh, if he happened to look down. He thought for a long time and then added sadly, It isn't as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why heffalumps hardly ever get caught.
That must be it, said Piglet. They sighed and got up, and when they had taken a few gorse prickles out of themselves, they sat down again. And all the time Pooh was saying to himself, If only I could think of something. For he felt sure that a very clever brain could catch a heffalump if only he knew the right way to go about it. Suppose, he said to Piglet, you wanted to catch me. How would you do it?
Well, said Piglet, I should do it like this. I should make a trap, and I should put a jar of honey in the trap. And you would smell it, and you would go in after it, and I would go in after it, said Pooh excitedly, only very carefully so as not to hurt myself, and I would get to the jar of honey, and I should lick around the edges first of all, pretending that there wasn't any more, you know, and then I should walk away and think about it a little, and then I should come back and start licking in the middle of the jar, and then... Yes, well, never mind about that. There you would be, and there I should catch you. Now the first thing to think of is this. What do heffalumps like? I should think acorns, shouldn't you? We'll get a lot of... I say, Pooh, wake up. Pooh, who had gone into a happy dream, woke up with a start and said that honey was a much more trappy thing than acorns. Piglet didn't think so, and they were just going to argue about it when Piglet remembered if they put acorns in the trap, he would have to find the acorns. But if they put honey, then Pooh would have to give up some of his own honey. So he said, All right, honey then, just as Pooh remembered it too, and was going to say, All right, acorns. Honey, said Piglet to himself in a thoughtful way as if it were now settled, I'll dig the pit while you go and get the honey. Very well, said Pooh, and he stumped off. As soon as he got home, he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair, and took down a very large jar of honey from the top shelf. It had honey written on it, but just to make sure, he took off the paper cover and looked at it. And it looked just like honey. But you never can tell, said Pooh. I remember my uncle saying once that he had seen cheese just this color. So he put his tongue in and took a large lick. Yes, he said, it is, no doubt about that. And honey, I should say, right down to the bottom of the jar. Unless, of course, he said, somebody put cheese in at the bottom just for a joke. Perhaps I had better go a little further, just in case heffalumps don't like cheese, same as me. Ah, and he gave a deep sigh. I was right. It is honey, right the way down. Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of his very deep pit and said, Got it? And Pooh said, Yes, but it isn't quite a full jar. And he threw it down to Piglet. And Piglet said, No, it isn't. Is that all you've got left? And Pooh said, Yes, because it was. So Piglet put the jar at the bottom of the pit and climbed out. And then they went off home together. Well, good night, Pooh, said Piglet when they had got to Pooh's house. And we meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine trees, and see how many heffalumps we've got in our trap.
6 o'clock, Piglet,
And you have you got any string? No, why do you want string? To lead them home with. Oh, I think heffalumps come if you whistle. Some do, some don't. You never can tell with heffalumps. Well, good night. Good night. And Piglet trotted off to his house, Trespassers W, while Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had had that sinking feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry. So he went to the larder, and he stood on a chair and reached up to the top shelf and found nothing. That's funny, he thought. I know I had a jar of honey there, a full jar, full of honey right up to the top, and it had honey written on it, so that I should know it was honey. That's very funny. And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was, and murmuring a murmur to himself like this. It's very funny, 'cause I know I had some honey, 'cause it had a label on saying honey. A voluptuous full up pot, too, and I don't know where it's got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, it's funny. He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a singing sort of way, when he suddenly remembered he had put it into the cunning trap to catch the heffalump. Bother, said Pooh. It all comes from trying to be kind to heffalumps. And he got back into bed. But he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting sheep, which is sometimes a good way of getting to sleep, and as that was no good, he tried counting heffalumps. And that was worse, because every heffalump that he counted was making straight for a pot of Pooh's honey, and eating it all. For some minutes he lay there miserably, but when the 587th heffalump was licking its jaws and saying to itself, Very good honey this is, I don't know what I've tasted better, Pooh could bear it no longer. He jumped out of bed, he ran out of the house, and he ran straight to the 6 pine trees. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the 100 Acre Wood which seemed to show that it was waking up and would soon be kicking off the close. In the half-light the pine trees looked cold and lonely, and the very deep pit seemed deeper than it was, and Pooh's jar of honey at the bottom was something mysterious, a shape, and no more. But as he got nearer to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish up his mouth, ready for it. Bother, said Pooh, as he got his nose inside the jar. A heffalump has been eating it. And then he thought a little and said, Oh, no, I did. I forgot. Indeed, he had eaten most of it. But there was a little left at the very bottom, and he pushed his head right in and began to lick. By and by, Piglet woke up. As soon as he woke, he said to himself, Oh! Then he said quite bravely, Yes, and then still more bravely, Quite so. But he didn't feel very brave, for the word which was really jiggetting about in his brain was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And how did it come? Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Supposing it was fierce with pigs, would it make any difference if the pig had a grandfather called Trespassers William? He didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and he was going to see his first heffalump in about an hour from now. Of course Pooh would be with him, and it was much more friendly with 2.
But suppose heffalumps were very fierce with pigs and bears. Wouldn't it be better to pretend that he had a headache and couldn't go up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then suppose that it was a very fine day and there was no heffalump in the trap. Here he would be in bed all morning, simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a clever idea. He would go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap, and see if there was a heffalump there. And if there was, he would go back to bed. And if there wasn't, he wouldn't. So off he went. At first he thought that there wouldn't be a heffalump in the trap. And then he thought that there would. And as he got nearer, he was sure that there would, because he could hear it heffalumping about it like anything. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear," said Piglet to himself. And he wanted to run away, but somehow, having got so near, he felt that he must see what a heffalump was like. So he crept to the side of the trap and looked in. And all the time, Winnie-the-Pooh had been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he shook it, the more tightly it stuck. "Bother," he said inside the jar, and "oh, help," and mostly "ow," and he tried bumping it against things, but as he couldn't see what he was bumping it against, it didn't help him. Oh, excuse me. And he tried to climb out of the trap. But as he could see nothing but the jar, and not much that he couldn't find his way, so at last he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was at that moment that Piglet looked down. "Help! Help!" cried Piglet. "A heffalump! A horrible heffalump!" And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, "Help! Help! A horrible heffalump! Huff! A huff! A hellable horralump! Hoffable hellarump!" And he didn't stop crying and scampering until he got to Christopher Robin's house. "Whatever is the matter, Piglet?" said Christopher Robin, who was just getting up. "Heff!" said Piglet, breathing so hard that he could hardly speak. A heffalump." "Where?" "Up there," said Piglet, waving his paw. "What did it look like?" Like, it had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great, enormous thing, like nothing. A huge, big, well, like, I don't know, like a enormous, big nothing, like a jar." "Well," said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, "I shall go and look at it. Come on." Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off they went. "I can hear it, can't you?" said Piglet anxiously as they got near. "I can hear something," said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh bumping his head against a tree root he had found. "There!" said Piglet. "Isn't it awful?" And he held on tight to Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly, Christopher Robin began to laugh. And he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And while he was still laughing, crash went the heffalump's head against the tree root. Smash went the jar, and out came Pooh's head again. Then Piglet saw what a foolish piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went home to breakfast together. "Oh, Bear," said Christopher Robin, "how I do love you." "So do I," said Pooh.
Well, we are down to the last chapter that we're going to read tonight. Hey, Trip, how you doing? I'm glad you stopped in. Seven Mars. Yeah, it really is. It's one of my favorite children's books. I've actually been pretty lucky over the last couple of Sundays, last few Sundays, where I've got to read some of my favorite children's books. Prior to this, we read Charlotte's Web. We also read, before that, we read Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Really just, lots of fun. Who became Pooey, who is now Pooh. Oh, that's adorable. That's adorable. I've got a couple of choices as to what I could be reading next, and I might do a poll for that. I'll have to think about that. Oh. That is, yeah, I played WoW for a while. Yes, Wizard of Oz. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that notification. If you know World of Warcraft, it is a Murloc's aggro sound. I love the very early in the game when you first start out. That sound is terrifying, and later as you level up, that sound is just annoying because you just turn around and smack it and it's dead. Nice. Troll symbolist head. That's very cool. But yeah, that is a good friend of mine. That is her text message notification sound, and there's a story behind it, but it's not one that I can tell. But if you knew what it was, it would be funny. The Wonderful Flight to the Mushroom Planet. I've never heard that one. I am considering Narnia. We read A Wrinkle in Time earlier this year, and I would like to read more of that series as well. So yeah. Trip, I have not read BFG yet. I do have a bunch of Roald Dahl books. I was also thinking about doing because we've already done Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I was thinking about doing Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. I can't say it. If I can't say it, I know I'm going to read it. I would love to read Tolkien, but it would be like 3 months that we'd be reading it, and that would just burn me out. I have not read Secret Garden. Actually, speaking of Secret Garden, Rita, are you in here? Oh, she may have left. Okay, so I am going to... I'm going to tag somebody. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but we'll see. So, speaking of Secret Garden, this user, and I'm not sure if this will search right, but if she was in the chat, you could check her out. But she is actually currently reading The Secret Garden on her page, and she does an excellent job. So you might want to check her out. I have read a couple of stories from The Illustrated Man. We've done a bunch of Ray Bradbury. Hey, Katie, welcome in. We've done some Stephen King. We've done Richard Matheson. We've done H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe. We've done a bunch of stuff. Treasure Island is on my list, and so is Joe, it's Reader. Rita spelled Reada, and then reader as in Reader. She's currently reading right now. She does an excellent job. Yes, reader. But yeah, I actually have a bunch of stuff. So I've got like The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So there's a lot of books that I would like to do. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a list of the next books that I have and make some options and do a poll tomorrow night and let you guys pick. That would be fun. All right, so let me continue. Chapter 6, in which Eeyore has a birthday and gets 2 presents. Same time as I do most nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, Trista, James Patterson. You're going to keep suggesting that until I do it. His books, I've noticed his books are fairly long, so I would have to check and see if he's got some short stories. But yeah. Eeyore, the old gray donkey, stood by the side of the stream and looked at himself in the water. Pathetic, he said. That's what it is. Pathetic. He turned and walked slowly down the stream for 20 yards, splashed across it, and walked slowly back on the other side. Then he looked at himself in the water again. As I thought, he said, no better from this side. But nobody minds. Nobody cares. Pathetic. That's what it is. There was a cracking noise in the bracken behind him, and out came Pooh. Good morning, Eeyore, said Pooh. Good morning, Pooh Bear, said Eeyore gloomily. If it is a good morning, he said, which I doubt, said he. Why? What's the matter? Nothing, Pooh Bear, nothing. We can't all, and some of us don't. That's all there is to it. Can't all what? Said Pooh, rubbing his nose. Gaiety, song and dance. Here we go round the mulberry bush. Oh, said Pooh. He thought for a long time and then asked, What mulberry bush is that? Bonhomie, went on Eeyore gloomily. French word meaning bonhomie, he explained. I'm not complaining, but there it is. Pooh sat down on a large stone and tried to think this out. It sounded to him like a riddle, and he was never much good at riddles, being a bear of very little brain. So he sang Coddleston Pie instead. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie, a fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. That was the first verse. When he had finished it, Eeyore didn't actually say that he didn't like it, so Pooh very kindly sang the second verse to him. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie, a fish can't whistle, and neither can I. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Eeyore still said nothing at all, so Pooh hummed the third verse quietly to himself. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Why does a chicken? I don't know why. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. That's right, said Eeyore. Sing.
Umpty tiddly umpty too. Here we go gathering nuts in May. Enjoy yourself.
I am, said Pooh.
Some can, said Eeyore.
Why, what's the matter?
Is anything the matter?
You seem so sad, Eeyore.
Sad? Why should I be sad? It's my birthday, the happiest day of the year.
Your birthday? Said Pooh in great surprise.
Of course it is. Can't you see? Look at all the presents I have had. He waved a foot from side to side. Look at the birthday cake, candles, and pink sugar.
Pooh looked, first to the right, then to the left. Presents? Said Pooh. Birthday cake? Said Pooh. Where?
Can't you see them?
No, said Pooh.
Neither can I, said Eeyore. Joke, he explained. Ha ha.
Pooh scratched his head, being a little puzzled by all this. But is it really your birthday? He asked.
It is.
Oh, well, many happy returns of the day, Eeyore.
And many happy returns to you, Pooh Bear.
But it isn't my birthday.
No, it's mine.
But you said many happy returns.
Well, why not? You don't always want to be miserable on my birthday, do you?
Oh, I see, said Pooh.
It's bad enough, said Eeyore, almost breaking down, being miserable myself, with no presents and no cake and no candles and no proper notice taken of me at all. But if everybody else is going to be miserable too...
This was too much for Pooh. Stay here, he called to Eeyore, as he turned and hurried back home as quick as he could, for he felt that he must get poor Eeyore a present of some sort at once, and he could always think of a proper one afterwards. Outside his house he found Piglet jumping up and down trying to reach the knocker. "Hello, Piglet," he said. "Hello, Pooh," said Piglet. "What are you trying to do?" "I was trying to reach the knocker," said Piglet. "I just came round." "Let me do it for you," said Pooh kindly. So he reached up and knocked at the door. "I have just seen Eeyore," he began, "and poor Eeyore is very sad and is in a very sad condition, because it's his birthday, and nobody has taken any notice of it, and he's very gloomy. You know what Eeyore is, and there he was, and what a long time whoever lives here is answering this door." He knocked again. "But, Pooh," said Piglet, "it's your own house." "Oh," said Pooh. "So it is," he said. "Well, let's go in." So in they went. The first thing Pooh did was to go to the cupboard to see if he had quite a small jar of honey left, and he had, so he took it down. "I'm giving this to Eeyore," he explained, "as a present. What are you going to give?" "Couldn't I give it too?" said Piglet. "From both of us?" "No," said Pooh. "That would not be a good plan." "All right, then. I'll give him a balloon. I've got one left from my party. I'll go and get it now. Shall I?" "That, Piglet, is a very good idea. It is just what Eeyore wants to cheer him up. Nobody can be uncheered with a balloon." So off Piglet trotted, and in the other direction went Pooh with his jar of honey. It was a warm day, and he had a long way to go. He hadn't gone more than halfway when a sort of funny feeling began to creep all over him. It began at the tip of his nose, and trickled all through him and out at the soles of his feet. It was just as if somebody inside him were saying, "Now then, Pooh, time for a little something." "Oh, dear, dear," said Pooh. "I don't know what it is. Don't know it was didn't. Excuse me. I need some water." "Dear, dear," said Pooh. "I didn't know it was late as that." So he sat down and took the top off his jar of honey. "Luckily I brought this with me," he thought. "Many a bear going out on a warm day like this would never have thought of bringing a little something with him." And he began to eat. "Now, let me see," he thought, as he took his last lick inside the jar. "Where was I going? Ah, yes, Eeyore." He got up slowly, and then suddenly he remembered. He had eaten Eeyore's birthday present. "Bother," said Pooh. "What shall I do? I must give him something." For a little while he couldn't think of anything. Then he thought, "Well, it's a very nice pot, even if there's no honey in it. And if I washed it clean and got somebody to write a happy birthday on it, Eeyore could keep things in it, which might be useful." So, as he was just passing the 100 Acre Wood, he went inside to call on Owl, who lived there. "Good morning, Owl," he said.
"Good morning, Pooh," said Owl.
"Many happy returns of Eeyore's birthday," said Pooh.
"Oh, is that what it is?"
"What are you giving him, Owl?"
"What are you giving him, Pooh?"
"I'm giving him a useful pot to keep things in, and I wanted to ask you—"
"Is this it?" said Owl, taking it out of Pooh's paw.
"Yes, and I wanted to ask you—"
"Somebody has been keeping honey in it," said Owl.
"You can keep anything in it," said Pooh earnestly. "It's very useful like that. And I wanted to ask you—"
"You ought to write a happy birthday on it."
"That was what I wanted to ask you," said Pooh, "because my spelling is wobbly. It's good spelling, but it wobbles, and the letters get in the wrong places. Would you write a happy birthday on it for me?"
"It's a nice pot," said Owl, looking at it all round. Couldn't I give it from both of us?"
"No," said Pooh. "That would not be a good plan. Now, I'll just wash it first, and then you can write on it." Well, he washed the pot out and dried it, while Owl licked the end of his pencil and wondered how to spell birthday.
"Can you read, Pooh?" he asked, a little anxiously. "There's a notice about knocking and ringing outside my door which Christopher Robin wrote. Could you read it?"
"Christopher Robin told me what it said, and then I could."
"Well, I'll tell you what this says, and then you'll be able to.
So Owl wrote, and this is what he wrote. "Hippy Pappy Birthday." Pooh looked on, admiring.
"I'm just saying a happy birthday," said Owl carelessly.
"It's a nice long one," said Pooh, very much impressed by it.
"Well, actually, of course, I'm saying a very happy birthday with love from Pooh. Naturally, it takes a good deal of pencil to say a long thing like that."
"Oh, I see," said Pooh. While all this was happening, Piglet had gone back to his own house to get Eeyore's balloon. He held it very tightly against himself, so that it shouldn't blow away, and he ran as fast as he could so as to get to Eeyore's before Pooh did, for he thought that he would like to be the first one to give a present, just as if he had thought of it without being told by anybody.
and running along and thinking how pleased Eeyore would be, he didn't look where he was going. And suddenly he put his foot in a rabbit hole and fell down flat on his face. Bang! Piglet lay there, wondering what had happened. At first he thought that the whole world had blown up, and then he thought that perhaps only the forest part of it had, and then he thought that perhaps only he had, and he was now alone in the moon or somewhere, and would never see Christopher Robin or Pooh or Eeyore again. And then he thought, well, even if I'm in the moon, I needn't be face downwards all the time. So he got cautiously up and looked about him. He was still in the forest. Well, that's funny, he thought. I wonder what that bang was. I couldn't have made such a noise just falling down. Where's my balloon? And what's that small piece of damp rag doing? It was the balloon.
Oh, dear, said Piglet. Oh, dearie, dearie, dear. Well, it's too late now. I can't go back, and I haven't another balloon, and perhaps Eeyore doesn't like balloons so very much. So he trotted on, rather sadly now, and down he came to the side of the stream where Eeyore was, and called out to him. Good morning, Eeyore, shouted Piglet.
Good morning, little Piglet, said Eeyore. If it is a good morning, he said, which I doubt, said he. Not that it matters, he said.
Many happy returns of the day, said Piglet, having now got closer.
Eeyore stopped looking at himself in the stream and turned to stare at Piglet. Just say that again, he said. Wait a minute. Balancing on 3 legs, he began to bring his 4th leg very cautiously up to his ear. I did this yesterday, he explained as he fell down for the 3rd time. It's quite easy, so as I can hear better. There, that's done it. Now then, what were you saying? He pushed his ear forward with his hoof.
Many happy returns of the day, said Piglet again.
Meaning me?
Of course, Eeyore.
My birthday?
Yes.
Me having a real birthday?
Yes, Eeyore, and I've brought you a present.
Eeyore took down his right hoof from his ear, turned round, and with great difficulty put up his left hoof. I must have that in the other ear, he said. Now then.
A present, said Piglet very loudly.
Meaning me again?
Yes.
My birthday still?
Of course, Eeyore.
Me going on having a real birthday?
Yes, Eeyore, and I brought you a balloon.
Balloon? said Eeyore. You did say balloon. One of those big colored things you blow up. Gaiety, song and dance, and here we are and there we are.
Yes, but I'm very sorry, Eeyore, but when I was running along to bring it to you, I fell down.
Dear, dear, how unlucky. You ran too fast, I expect. You didn't hurt yourself, little Piglet?
No, but oh, Eeyore, I burst the balloon.
There was a very long silence. My balloon, said Eeyore at last. Piglet nodded. My birthday balloon.
Yes, Eeyore, said Piglet, sniffing a little. Here it is, with many happy returns of the day. And he gave Eeyore the small piece of damp rag.
Is this it? Said Eeyore, a little surprised. Piglet nodded. My present. Piglet nodded again. The balloon.
Yes.
Thank you, Piglet, said Eeyore. You don't mind my asking, he went on. But what color was this balloon when it was a balloon?
Red.
I just wondered. Red, he murmured to himself. My favorite color. How big was it?
About as big as me.
I just wondered. About as big as Piglet, he said to himself sadly. My favorite size. Well, well. Piglet felt very miserable and didn't know what to say. He was still opening his mouth to begin something, and then, deciding it wasn't any good saying that, when he heard a shout from the other side of the river, and there was Pooh.
Many happy returns of the day, called out Pooh, forgetting that he had said it already.
Thank you, Pooh. I'm having them, said Eeyore gloomily.
I've brought you a little present, said Pooh excitedly.
I've had it, said Eeyore.
Pooh now splashed across the stream to Eeyore, and Piglet was sitting a little way off, his head in his paws, snuffling to himself. It's a useful pot, said Pooh. Here it is, and it's got a very happy birthday with love from Pooh written on it. That's what all the writing is, and it's for putting things in. There. When Eeyore saw the pot, he became quite excited.
Why, he said, I believe my balloon will just go into that pot.
Oh, no, Eeyore, said Pooh. Balloons are much too big to go into pots. What you do with a balloon is you hold the balloon.
Not mine, said Eeyore proudly. Look, Piglet.
And as Piglet looked sorrowfully around, Eeyore picked the balloon up with his teeth and placed it carefully in the pot, picked it out again and put it on the ground, then picked it up again and put it carefully back. So it does, said Pooh. It goes in. So it does, said Piglet, and it comes out.
Doesn't it, said Eeyore. It goes in and out like anything.
I'm very glad, said Pooh happily, that I thought of giving you a useful pot to put things in. And I'm very glad, said Piglet happily, that I thought of giving you something to put in a useful pot. And I didn't give him anything, asked Christopher Robin sadly.
Well, of course you did, I said. You gave him, don't you remember, a little...
I gave him a box of paints to paint things with.
That was it.
Why didn't I give it to him in the morning?
You were so busy getting his party ready for him. He had a cake with icing on top, and 3 candles, and his name in pink sugar, and...
Yes, I remember, said Christopher Robin.
Perfect timing.
Ah. 216 likes. Wow, you guys are incredible. Thank you. That's awesome. Well, oh, there you are, Rita. You're very welcome. There was somebody in here that asked about Secret Garden, and I told them that you were reading Secret Garden currently, and that they should go check out your page. So whoever it was that was asking about Secret Garden,
Rita Reader is the one who's you want to go. So Joe, yes, go follow Rita as she's reading it. She does an excellent job. Really an excellent job. It's like sitting it because she actually has the book page open and flips through it. It's like, I don't know, it's like having my mom read to me when I was a kid. So it's very cool. Very cool. So no, Rita, you do a great job. You really do. I enjoy your videos when they show up on my page. I got to go start actually watching them. Oh, cool. I'll have to go check that out. You're very welcome. I appreciate your support, believe me. Well, it is 11 o'clock. I appreciate that, dyslexic fingers. So I'll be back on tomorrow night with the conclusion of Winnie-the-Pooh, and I will make up a poll for you guys to do at the end of the night to decide what the next book we read will be. So, thank you all for spending a little time with me here tonight. And like I said, come back tomorrow night for the conclusion of the story at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed the story. I appreciate every single one of you. So if you enjoy these stories and would like to help support what I do here, please consider subscribing or becoming a superfan. It helps keep the campfire lit. But, subscribed or not, I truly appreciate the fact that you're here. You guys make this worth my while. So until tomorrow night, please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. Good night, everybody.